Hello and welcome to League of Legends Patch Review 13.16. My name is Chris, and I'm once again joined by my patch review duo partner, Jason.
Hey Chrissy, good to be back. This is quite an interesting patch, right? There's kind of a lot and very little all at once.
Yeah, there's a couple interesting changes, but nothing really jumped out at me. One of them jumped out at me a lot, but I've kind of moved on from the champion somewhat, so I'm not as excited as I would have been years ago.
I feel like if you're listening to all the patch review notes and you're like, I gotta listen to every little thing, and you feel like skipping one video, this might be the one to skip. All you
Powerful.
need to know is there are items that you can build on assassins that are not called Duskblade of Darkthar now, Drakthar. That's really kind of the only big one in here. We'll go over all the little ones and what they might mean for the game, but do you think there were any other big things in here, Chrissy?
Well, if they are, we'll get to it in time.
All
That was
right.
a powerful advertisement for our video.
Just saying, all the good people out there that are listening to every single video, take a day off.
Yeah. I've got like a small stomach ache, so I'm glad this is a shorter one, to be honest.
Let's get to it, man.
Okay, first up we got Akali with the textbook Q and or passive dicking aroundness that she gets every like month.
Hmm.
This has been changed, it's got to be like 15 times by now. I would say like 20 times if you combine this and her passive, since they kind of go together. I don't even know. I don't even really have much of a comment on this anymore. It gets buffed, it gets nerfed, it gets buffed, it gets nerfed. Next
Yeah, the
patch,
really
it'll.
funny thing is it's almost always the 5 point strike, the base damage, or the energy cost, or both, right? So this is like a small buff to it. Um, I don't know. I think Akali maybe has been struggling a little bit in the higher levels. She does okay in the games I'm in.
Yeah, she's a very skilled champion. I think
Hmm.
can't brain dead
Yeah,
your way into Akali like prior to her rework. You could.
yeah. If you've played like 4 games in Akali, please don't bring it into ranked. Please don't do that.
I've actually spent a fair amount of time on her after her rework when she settled down a
Hmm.
little in changes, and she is very challenging to play.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I think one of
Um,
the hardest parts is just you never expect the 5 point strike to be so short range.
yeah, the way her passive functions, it's kind of frustrating. You have to like move around a lot to keep getting stacks of your passive. It's just very difficult.
Yeah, at least the good Akali is like can use the Twilight Shroud to to not only get a lot of movement in, but also reposition really well in the fights or avoid being hit. When I see an Akali on the other team, though, I love bringing Morgana and just ulting as soon as she goes into her shroud.
Mm. Okay, next up, something a lot more impactful. We've got some big buffs here for Brand. Some more mana restore on his passive, which you honestly never even really see him utilize because he honestly doesn't even really need it. And then, most importantly, for the Brand supports of the world, we have some buffs to his Q and his E. Most notably, there is not a buff here to Pillar of Flame, his most consequential ability, honestly, in terms of support play. And if they did
Hmm.
buff that, it's kind of a double buff because the AP ratio scales higher if they're affected by his passive. So they left that one alone. I honestly don't really mind these changes too much. The damage component of his Q and his E are relatively laughable to begin with, especially his E. So I don't
Um,
really care.
yeah, I mean they don't do a ton of damage, but not only stacking up the passive, for the explosion, but also just triggering the passive very easily, particularly his E.
Yeah, they didn't
That
change
could be like,
that.
12, right, I'm just saying like they're useful in damage in that sense because that's just like you could just hit somebody with an E that dodges everything else and boom, 12% of their max health and magic damage. Yeah, Brand really is one of those champs that even if he gets completely stomped in the early game, and doesn't get a lot of gold income, He can just find the right team fight later on and completely destroy you.
I agree. I
Uh,
think he's one of the most effective champions from behind in the entire game.
yeah, I think that's reasonable to say, especially if you don't count like the traditional like low econ supports.
It's probably one of
Uh,
the only mages I would say that about, because another other champs I would say something similar to that about would be like Alistair or Blitzcrank, champions that
yeah,
don't really need items as much.
yeah, exactly.
But
Uh, you know, Karma and such. Yeah. Maybe like Lissandra would be another mage that's like decent from behind. But I agree with you.
no,
Brand's probably the best one.
it's all the max health magic damage he does that keeps him in the game, no matter how bad he does. I wouldn't say the
Absolutely.
same thing is true of Lysandra or Karma.
Yeah. As far as the mana restoration, this is going to make it easier for bad brands like myself that spend a lot of mana wave clearing.
Yeah, but you
Um,
can't really use this on your support brand, and the thing is,
you don't need it
it's
on support brand.
yeah, but even if you're taking him mid, it's just really difficult to line up his abilities to actually trigger this because his Pillar of Flame just you have to be really ahead to actually make use of this, to be honest, or just use a ton of autos to
You're talking
line
about the
everything
passive?
up. Yeah,
You can kill minions to get the mana back.
I know.
Okay. Yeah. I
But
mean,
if,
like,
if you're not like one hitting the minion line with like his W, or you're not
mhm.
prepping all of them with like auto attacks, it's kind of difficult to consistently use his thing. He hasn't really had that thing that long. I just think it's if they really wanted to help him out, they should just have minions get
Well,
executed by his passive when they're at a certain threshold of health.
I think you get mana back when they die while they're ablaze, even if you don't score the kill with the ability.
Yeah, it used to be they had to die while it's ablaze, but then they changed it because that was even more tedious. They just have to die to one of his abilities.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Either
Anyhow,
way,
my guess would be, we've seen a lot of assassins lately, and that's probably why his win rate may have dropped a little, and why they're buffing him. Like Brand does struggle a little into
well,
assassins.
they were smart not to touch his W because that probably would have made him too obnoxious bot lane.
Yeah, that's definitely the bread and butter of his damage.
I will pay Riot Balance Team a rare compliment by not doing that.
All right.
All
I'm not
right.
so sure you're gonna do the same with Caitlyn.
Well, she's one of my favorite AD carries,
Hmm.
and obviously, if you need less stacks to trigger this, this is a buff in some sense, especially when it triggers faster when you're in bushes. Is this a nerf somehow too? It says damage unchanged, but I don't know if I even believe the proof of my eyes.
Well, the damage, I think you're talking about the base damage. I spent like 15 minutes trying to read this and understand what it is, and it does seem to me like it scales a little bit better on your crit chance.
Well, even if it's slightly more powerful or more weaker
Huh.
in the early game based on like your first purchase, just activating another headshot with less autos is powerful enough in itself to where I'd say this is a substantial buff, especially in the laning
Yeah,
phase, which is her whole reason for being.
yeah. The number of stacks is actually pretty significant here, I think.
No
If
kidding.
you're playing her with attack speed and trying to run someone down, or if you're just doing a lot of laning poke, great for both of those.
Good point. Okay.
As far as the critical strike ratio, like this is, I don't think Isaac Newton could explain this. This is ridiculous. Just know that yeah, Caitlyn possibly better scaling with crit on the headshot, but most importantly, you need fewer stacks.
I probably teach something like this, and I'm not 100% sure what's changing.
Yeah, really crit. Crit has such a weird place in the game where it seems a little bit unnecessary. You could do almost the same things with just having attack damage
Well,
and
I
attack
don't.
speed
I don't think it's
scale.
wrong for them to have some ability scale with critical strike chance. It's just they come
Mhm.
up with these like crazy ass formulas that are difficult to look at.
Yeah.
There's examples of champions that have way more simplistic formulas that interact with Critical Strike. In fact, we can look to just
There are
Caitlyn's
there are some
ultimate.
that
We can look
can.
just to Caitlyn's ultimate that got that new synergy with Critical Strike chance, and it's very simple to understand. You know,
Yeah, I
it
mean that's
gets
a good
like
point.
0 to 25 or 35 bonus damage based on 0 to 100% Critical Strike chance. Very easy to digest. This is not.
Amen.
Okie dokie. Next up, I like to point out this bug fix with Mundo's Q, because this
Okay.
is something. If I were to take control of like Riot, I would literally implement this across like every single champion in the game, because there are so many abilities for like 10 years that
Uh
suffer
huh.
from this problem, and so many abilities can be cleaned up to match the animation uh, more accurately.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's a million.
The
In
the
fact, I would
one
say
thing.
more are bad than there are good ones.
Yeah, I'd say it's about half and half. That there are some, and I think they're probably trying to, find them little by little. That without too much of a programming overhead, or a processing overhead, sorry, that you can, very easily just fix the hitbox of. There are some, there are some missiles and other skill shots with kind of irregular shapes for their hitbox that actually the more accurate you try to get it, the more processing overhead there is, and therefore the harder it is on their servers, the more likely to lag, etc.
Man, don't bullshit me. Someone just has to open up like a text box and
Dude, I'm
backspace the
working on.
width value from like 75 to 50 or something.
If it's a rectangle or to some extent an ellipse, that is absolutely true. But there are some where they try to, in order to like not make it look like it clips through someone, they give it like a slightly wider hitbox at the front or the back. And like I'm playing around with different like irregular skill shots in an action RPG I'm working on now,
Okay, well, if it is
and
something like Lyssandra's
it
Q,
takes a lot of checks. It takes a lot of checks in the programming, and it takes like actual like computer processing overhead.
okay, well, I'll buy that if it's something like Lyssandra's Q or Graves' ultimate or something, where it has
Yes.
like a secondary effect if it hits targets and
Hmm.
stuff. That makes
Or also
sense, but
things
this
like
is just a line skill shot, you know?
yeah, yeah, and that's why they fixed it, and that's probably why they should have fixed it about 6 years ago. But if
Right.
you think about something like Blitzcrank Q, which has like a very irregular kind of extra width right at the very end of its skill shot, you get some weird processing that you would have
I
to actually work with to make the hitbox precise.
I'd say that's probably one of the better ones. I feel like that
Yeah,
one's relatively precise. I
it's
think
not
the
terrible.
worst offender is Jinx's ultimate. That
I
one
was gonna
is
say Lux's ult.
that one's see. I don't know if that one's bad because the
Uh-huh.
laser it like kind of grows in size. It's like small, and then when it goes, it blows up and gets larger. So
Hmm.
that one's kind of iffy. But yeah, I have seen a lot of questionable ones of that, especially if you're like underneath it or
Yeah.
something. It looks kind of iffy, but Jinx's ultimate is just absolutely ridiculous. You can be like three Teemos above or below that thing, and it'll go right past you and then blow up. That thing's absolutely criminal, and
That
they
that
don't give
that
a shit about fixing it because it's
I
just a
think that
flashy
one's actually
ability.
intended. It has like a really small hitbox, and then once it hits something, it has like a huge
No, 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 no.
explosion area. No, what are you talking?
I'm not talking about it hitting like its primary target and then it does the splash damage to all the
Oh,
set. I'm talking about the
you're talking about that
primary.
the missile hits you, like hits nothing else, and then explodes after it goes by you. I've seen that
Yes,
once or twice. Yeah. Okay.
yes, and not
Oh
just
yeah,
go
that's
right
ridiculous.
past you. Just like it'll hit you when it's like many units left or right of you. It's absolutely
That,
preposterous. It's the
that's
worst
where
one in the
Donald
game.
Trump just takes a Sharpie and draws the collision map.
Okay, what does he have to do with that?
It's about as accurate as his hurricane maps.
uh, what is what does he have to do with weather?
What? Oh my God! Look up Donald Trump hurricane map after we do this. After we do this video.
Is that something he just did?
No, this was years ago. This was all over the place.
Oh,
He
okay,
uh, he basically said,
whatever.
we're safe. We don't need to worry about the hurricane. And he like just crossed off all of the models and drew with a Sharpie where he thought the hurricane was gonna go.
Whatever. That sounds about right.
Yeah, that's like the
Okay.
jigsaw.
Next up we got Echo. don't like any buffs to this champion's Q. I think it's one of the most brain dead wave clear tools in the entire game, and it's very obnoxious, I think, to lane against. I don't think it makes him very fun when you're playing against him mid because his wave clear is just so effortless
Mm-hmm.
because of the way his Q just functions. So giving it any damage, especially base damage, I think is just kind of damning. I don't like it at all. Buffs to the rest of his kit we can talk about. I think overall he's a very snowbally champion who scales super hard with not a lot. So I don't think he's in a bad spot right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, come to think of it, I don't think I've seen an Echo mid in a few months now. That's probably just random chance, but I'm wondering, does he build the static shift, or does he not even need it because his Q is good enough wave clear?
Why would he build static shift?
Because like all of the AP assassins are building static shift mid now, Dianas and things like that. Yeah.
Oh well, at least she needs it.
LeBlanc builds it all the time.
I could see Diana because she like kind of scales with attack speed because of her passive.
I
But
played against 3 LeBlancs yesterday. Every single one built static.
okay, that must be some goofy Korean thing because there's no reason to build an item on LeBlanc that gives no AP and no magic pen. That's just
Yeah,
silly.
just pure wave clear, so you can roam easier.
That's just silly. Anyway,
All right.
then next up we got Karma here.
Know you like this.
This was the change I thought was the most impactful because, like so many things Riot does, this is merely a reversion to the previous numbers on her Q and her ultimate Q. I'm pretty sure this is how it was since she was reworked, like in season 3 or 4, with the 120% with the ultimate Q. So it's nice that she got some oomph back. Until they restore the how powerful her mantra shield was to the olden days, I'm still kind of disheartened. This was one of my go-to champs for like so many years.
Yeah, you still play her occasionally.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, this is definitely a big buff to mid Karma, which I haven't seen in a while now. And also pretty nice for support Karma. 10% extra AP on 2 different skills, and with the ultimate, that's doubled, right?
they just go together with the ultimate.
Yeah, yeah. And then the fact that the ultimate just got more cooldown reduction, or sorry,
Oh,
just a lower cooldown, is
wait a
really
minute.
nice because every time you hit an auto attack or an ability,
Wait
you're
a
getting
minute.
a cooldown reduction on it as well.
I think I actually read this wrong.
What's up?
They did increase the Q damage, but this isn't the bonus on hit damage on her mantra ultimate. This is the secondary effect, the explosion that got buffed. The the bonus damage is only
Hmm.
30%. So this is the secondary effect of her mantra Q. So what this did is it changed it from 40 plus 30 to 50 plus 30. So now her ultimate Q does like 80% AP. This part with Soul Flare is just the part that blows up after it lands.
Right, right, right.
Okay, well, I actually thought it was the other one, which would be way more impactful because that's like the instant effect that's really easy to hit people with.
Well, I think the inner flame they also gave the 10% extra to, right?
Yes, but the Soul Flare has its own extra AP ratio
Damage
that's not
component.
visible here that gets added to the inner flame. It's
Right.
30%. I just looked it up.
Okay. So I
But
mean that's still a nice buff.
yes, but it's not as good as I thought it would be. Honestly, I think the mantra buff is
The mantra buff is
probably
big.
probably more powerful because of how much ability haste you can stack these days, and you can still run ultimate hunter on her, which I think is absolutely redonkulously abusive on her. I've been running that on her ever since they got rid of ultimate hat and put it into ultimate hunter. I think
Yeah.
it's absolutely silly broken on her. You can get like three mantra somethings off in like fights and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I mean, late game, good Karma is going to be able to use her ultimate every 7-8
Yeah.
seconds.
As time has gone on, they've given her more of a reward for lowering the cooldown on her ultimate, even
This
if
is like
her
the,
other abilities have been nerfed a few times.
this is like the third time in a few seasons they've buffed the cooldowns on her ultimate. I think it used to be 45 seconds at all levels back in the day.
Well, if that's true, another thing they changed is just her reward for hitting abilities towards her ultimate's cooldown. So
Right. That's 2 seconds now, I believe.
no, I think it's like 5 or
Oh
something.
my god, seriously?
I think it gets up to like 5. Yeah, it is 5. It's 5 at
Yeah,
all
that's
levels.
badass.
Yeah, it's 5 at all levels. So
That
you
is
can
awesome.
easily get this thing down to like 16 to 18 with all the silliness runes and items.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm partial to Rod of Ages when I play Karma. What do you like as a mythic for her?
If I want to be a greedy bastard, I'll go Ludens, and if I
Mhm.
want to be cool, I'll probably go. I used to go Athenes a lot. I guess I could do that again. You know.
Oh yeah, Athene's too. Yeah, the Echoes of Helia. That would
Yeah.
actually be really good on her as well. Yeah.
It's hard not to go Ludens though. It's just makes sense.
Yeah.
Plus,
If you're mid, Lunds makes sense.
plus you gotta always like push the wave super hard, so that helps some.
Right. Echoes of Helia seems like it would be really good for support Karma though.
Probably. I think
With
Athenes
that
was
said,
better.
with these AP buffs, I think Rod of Ages also has a case to make.
I'll never say it's bad. I just don't
Yeah.
think its effect beats out all the offensive options.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Like I said when they first brought that back to the game, I think when they brought it back, they needed to make it more about scaling, make it take longer but get even more stats than the old Rod of Ages. I think that would have made it a in-line choice with like Ludens, Everfrost, whatever the hell, you know.
Yeah, for me, I would have rather they just kind of went all in on the Eternity passive and made it less of just like a stat stick.
I don't mind having one item that works different than all the other items.
I hear you. I mean, especially for mages mid, like there's so many items that are just, oh, you do a little bit more bonus damage and you get a minor speed boost. So I'm okay with it.
It's funny you mentioned that's literally what Night Harvester, Ludens, and Protobelt all
Yeah.
do the same thing,
Yes,
basically.
three of them are basically the same mage item mid.
Okay, juicy buffs for Karma. Next up, we've got Lucian. This is a pretty strong buff. Doesn't look like much, but considering this is like triggers on his autos twice every single time he
Yeah.
uses an ability, or every single time. Uh, oh no, wait. This is every single time an ally empowers him. This is the on-hit magic damage he deals.
Yeah.
This is still a big buff, though, in my opinion.
He's with a Lulu. If he's with a Nami, yeah.
Yeah, any buff to this is like a powerful thing, especially in the cheesy portions of the early laning phase where he's very dominant in the follow-up. One of the best champs in the game for that.
That's really good, and I think Lucian has probably struggled slightly recently just because there are so many hyper carries that are so effective right now.
Well, if he's
And
struggling, it's just because late game's not really his forte. He's kind of a lame bully and a mid-game champ, you know?
I also think that the ADC Mythic rework was not as kind to him as it was to a lot of the other champs, and that's part and parcel of what you're saying. But I think specifically that's what hurt him.
I don't think he's in a bad spot. He just,
It's not terrible.
has limitations based on the way he operates,
Right. Yeah, this is a nice buff that should get him back into the game.
All
5
right.
extra damage every time he brings out Lightslinger.
This next champion is near and dear to both of our hearts. Why don't
Very
you
much
why don't
so.
you take us away on this champion?
All right, so we've got a little bit more health growth, and we've got more damage on the Glitter Lance.
This is
and,
Lulu, by the way.
And I was gonna say, and more damage on the picks for Lulu. This is really interesting. It's a slight partial reversion to the big hits that she took to her AP ratios many years ago. I think maybe season 5 or 6.
Oh, ages ago.
Yeah, where she used to have a 70% AP ratio on Glitter Lance, I believe.
No, it was 90. It was 90.
It was 90%,
Yeah.
even if she didn't hit both parts of it, like hers and Pixis.
I don't know about that, but it was 90 altogether at some point.
Yeah, maybe it was 90 altogether if both her lance and Pixis lance
It's
would
not
would
super
hit.
hard to hit someone with both of them.
Right. And she was actually really good with wave clear at that time. She was often played top lane in a strange meta where the standard professional meta was to stack four people in one lane, either the top lane or the bottom lane, have your mid laner in the mid lane, and then just leave the other lane empty, or sometimes stack three people and have the one person basically try to like stand behind their turret and get a little bit of experience without dying. And Lulu was really good at that because she has a few ways to defend herself, and because she's low econ, she doesn't actually need to kill the minions to be relevant. So you had a lot of top laners that ended up playing Lulu in the LCS first season, in what they call the Australian meta, because one team would stack four in the top, one team would stack four in the bottom. It was pretty wacky. I remember some of the top laners were complaining about that. Dyrus was just saying, "I just want to play League of Legends." It was actually pretty fun to watch, I thought.
That honestly sounds like kind of a dumb meta.
Yeah, I mean when they added extra resistances in the first 14 minutes to the top and mid turrets. I'm not talking about plating, but before plating, the top and mid turrets had more resistances than the bottom lane turret did, and that encouraged teams to not just say, "Oh, you're stacking four in the bottom. Okay, we'll just stack four in the top," because they wouldn't be able to take the turret nearly as quickly. And that ended the Australian meta.
Well, that's interesting. The
Yeah.
last several years, I've just been playing her mid because I find she's a brilliant blind pick, and she's surprisingly good against pretty much all of the assassins. She tends to give them a very hard time, even if she can't come out ahead. It's very difficult for them to like get the closer on her because she has so many defensive shit going on.
That is true. She does do well, not only against an assassin mid, but also an assassin jungler, like a Kha'Zix or a Kayn or something like that. Very hard to catch Lulu. I do play mid Lulu sometimes still, especially if there's a hyper carry in the jungle or at ADC. But honestly, I've been struggling a little bit with her. Whereas in the past seasons, I would often dominate with Lulu mid. I have actually just found it harder and harder. To keep up with wave clear and to actually be able to put kill threat out. So this higher AP ratio on Glitterlands particularly is going to be big for her wave clear. I don't know that it's going to bring back top or mid Lulu as a popular pick, but it will definitely help. And of course, like as a support, like she's great. You know, even though they've reduced the polymorph a little bit, like she's still great with these hyper carries. Just provides fantastic peel.
Yep. Alright, next up we got Malzahar. We got some shenanigans here. This is technically a nerf, I suppose, because it just makes it harder for him to last hit. I know
It's
this is
so
one
easy
of
for him to last hit.
yeah, I know this is one of your boys when you feel like having the balls to go mid with. I personally, I know I say this all the time. I think he's in a really bad spot right now. It's funny. I actually have like a lot of friends who actually like Malzahar. I used to like him a lot too before he got reworked. I just think he's been in a terrible spot ever since he was played a lot of support. I don't think he ever recovered from the round of nerfs he got when he was being played consistently on support a few years ago, or several years ago, I guess.
Yeah, this is just one of them where I don't really, see where you're coming from. I think he's a very safe, reliable, and useful pick mid. He's not
Well,
usually going to run a game.
where I'm coming from, I think all you have to do is look up the numbers he used to have and look up what he is now. There's basically nothing that hasn't been gutted in terms of base numbers or scaling.
I mean, in particular, like the ultimate does so much more damage if you keep somebody in the ring the whole time.
No, I don't think so. It did
It
way more
does.
damage before his rework.
It does, and I also think the items have been kind to him over time. Like the way that Leandri's and Rylai's work now are just so good on mouse.
Yeah, I find those to be trap items. I think that's what the bad Malzahars take, are the all the dots.
I think the
Malzahars are
Malzahars
obsessed
win
with.
then.
I think Malzahars are obsessed with the dots. They think the dots are like supreme, but in reality, it's really about the magic pen. The dots are just look cool.
Magic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think the Malzahar should be targeting tanks if he has his choice.
I didn't say he has to. Magic Pen is good
Oh, do you go?
against
Do you go
magic.
flat Magic Pen or
You
percentage?
just get them all. You just get all the Magic Pen items because you get the most AP and you get the most shred. You devastating against squishies and it's better against tanks. The dots, you know,
Yeah.
it might look good on paper, but all those dots, but with no Magic Pen, it's not as strong as it looks.
Especially if you're doing percent health damage. I don't know. I think it's really strong. But flat magic pen, as well as armor pen, although that's been converted into the weird lethality now. Flat magic pen is better against squishies. Percentage magic pen is better against tanks.
But we could go over like his abilities on like a case by case basis, and I tell
Huh?
you, he is absolutely terrible compared to what he used to be. The only thing he has going for him now that's better is like the utility of his new passive that used to be his old minion thing, which
That's
I grant
yeah.
you his old voidlings they sucked.
Hmm.
I grant you that, and his
Yeah.
new passive is definitely far superior. But
Hmm.
outside of his voidlings, which sometimes do some damage if they don't die instantly, and his passive, all of his like main abilities are just garbage. They just don't do
Yeah.
anywhere near as much as they used to. His Q, for example, it had almost double the scaling, double the base damage, and an increased silence duration than it has now.
And what was the cooldown?
I have no
It was much
idea.
higher, wasn't it?
I'm sure it's comparable to what it is now.
I think it was much higher in the past. The
Even
items have
if
been
it
kind
was,
to him. The ring that he puts under his ult gives so much more damage than the simple damage with a suppress used to give, and he can do it in a small
no.
AoE.
No, the null
Um,
zone that he used to be able to put down had
huh?
way more scaling on it than the null zone that gets automatically put down when he does his ultimate. And the
right, but that's
base
because
damage
it's
on his
difficult to
ultimate
get the ultimate.
The base damage on his ultimate is absolutely pathetic compared to what the scaling was before his rework. It was like 2 to 600 plus like 150% of his AP. I'm looking at it right now, 125 to 275 plus 80% of his AP. Now I
Okay,
know that means that they're stuck in the null zone, but the null zone lasts a lot longer than they can possibly stand in it because the suppression only lasts two
not
and
if
a
you have
half
Ryla.
seconds.
Not if you have Rylas.
You could
He'll
buy
never
that.
get out of it.
You could buy that before his rework.
Yeah,
That's
I
not an
guess so. I guess.
argument. That's not an argument for his current version. That the items are different now.
You can buy it, but you can keep them in the null zone the whole time now. 2.5 seconds to suppress plus the slow. It's way easier for him to wave clear. I didn't think we'd have such a spicy debate on Malice here.
I'm
Um,
sick of my friends telling me that this champion is in somehow a decent
this
spot.
champion is good.
I
This
like him.
champion is
I like him
good.
too. I think he has a really cool design. His numbers are just absolute poop city.
Oh my god, you're Cassandra truthing here.
I want him to.
Um,
I want him to be really. I like him. I used to play him a lot.
and
You
in
know.
and in serious, like this nerf is so slight. It's still very easy for him to CS, I think.
Yes.
Um,
Just
this nerf
because
is so slight.
as long as his minions run to whatever has the malefic visions, yes, it'll be easy for him to
I know you
understand.
think he sucks, and I know I think he's good, but can we agree that he's basically just as good as he was last patch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we can another way of saying it, he's just as bad as he was last patch.
Yes, he's just as bad as he was last patch.
Okay, there we go.
And just as good. All right.
All right, next up we got a champion in crisis here. Milo, along with I would say Yumi,
Oh
is
my
in
god. They
a
finally
world of
threw
hurt
this
right
guy a
now.
bone while he was in the grave.
They gave him the old Zillion buff here, where his one damaging button got a big buff here. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, I'm not too impressed with it. Of course, it's nice that his like one button actually like has some oomph to it now. But he's already just been nerfed so many times for this to really help him. And this isn't even the part of his kit he needs help with. He needs to
Yeah.
he needs to get back some of like the trading potential in like Peely stuff and like enhancement effects that he had. Like they need to restore some of those nerfs on his passive, and I know his passive is really strong and all, but this is pathetic. And yeah, they need to increase like the AoE heal on his what the hell is his W called? It's like camp time or fun time.
Oh yeah, it's like cozy fire.
Yeah,
It's
cozy fire.
Late
So-
night camp something.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, they definitely need to make that way better. That the heal on that, it might be the worst in the game. It's so bad. It's
There are
ridiculous.
a lot of like really tiny heals in the game. If you look at like Aurelia's heightened style,
She doesn't have that anymore.
they got rid of the heal on that.
That's you're talking about the old Aurelia.
I'm talking about whatever she heals on hit now.
Yeah, that's her Q.
Okay,
It
okay.
used to be her W, that hidden style. Yeah, I know what
Yeah,
you're talking about.
yes, yes. Okay, sorry, they moved that to her Q. You're
And
right,
that's way
but
more
it's
powerful
pretty good.
than Milo's heal.
Is it? Okay.
It's so I can't think of
Um,
another champion who you can see single digit numbers when you heal someone.
I, was like, I mean,
It's like
Tarek until a few
6.
patches ago.
No, man, if he's got all 5 stacks of his Q, it's not
Tarek,
entirely pathetic.
21 healing.
It's way better than this fool's.
Yeah, and I know that you were always making fun of Rakan's, but they just doubled that a few
And for
patches ago.
Christ's sake, put an AP scaling on the heal on his ultimate. It's pathetic.
Yeah. So just to reset for anybody not looking, they increased the Milio Q AP ratio from 90 to 120%, which looks pretty significant. I don't know that AP damage from Milio's Q is really what you're looking for on the champ. And then a little bit better shielding on Warm Hugs. The AP ratio on that is also a shield, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, a little
It
bit
also
better
gives
shielding, a little
movement
bit better
speed,
damage.
but I don't remember if that scales with AP.
But I agree with you 100%. Like they have literally cut his passive to less than half of what it was when he came out. And until they give a little bit of that back, I don't think Milio is going to have a great place in the game.
They want to really help him out. They should make the charges of Warm Hugs regenerate way faster. It would just give him like some consistent shit to do. I know the ability like stacks and all, and that's good, but I don't really think it would be a problem for this champion to actually be strong for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be cool if like they gave Milio some type of like Imperial Mandate effect, where after he hit an enemy champion to actually reward him for doing that, the next follow up by an ally would do more damage.
Isn't that exactly what his passive does?
No, his passive is I think it's when he heals an enemy champion, right? They do more damage with their autos for a certain amount of time.
That's what you said.
No, I said when he hits an enemy champion, the next follow up by a by an ally will do more damage.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could just make it so his Q applies as passive when you hit someone.
Something like that.
Wouldn't even,
I would
still wouldn't be
yeah.
good.
It just feels like he's like a, I hate to say it, but kind of a brain dead champ. That there's not really a lot of room for skill expression.
No, I don't think he's a brain dead champ. I think he's secretly an extremely powerful, very high elo laner. I just think he's only good in the laning phase, and I think he's only good at high elos because if you break down his kit, what it does, and I said this when he first came out, this is a very like lane trading, like abusive kit. Like he gives champions more attack range. He gives them like movement speed on a dime, and he gives them.
And then in an easy fight, he can proc the passive 7 times.
Yeah, I think. I think he's only good at very high elo with like 2 people working together, communicating. Like this is when you'll have the range. This is when you'll have the speed up. This is when you'll have the burn thing.
I suppose, but I feel like a lot of what he does is just basically press E on his ally and press W on his ally. And then it's up to the ally to actually make use of those little windows that he gives her.
I agree. At low elo and outside of the laning phase, I feel like he is a champion without purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like this is literally supposed to go with Caitlyn and then be useless the rest of the game.
Yeah, I just wish there were a little more skill expression in his kit, where if he, really did a good job kind of skirting the fights and hitting enemies, that he could provide more use to his team.
Okie dokie.
Uh,
Next up, we've got some stat nerfs for Neferi. Haven't seen this champion a lot, and I guess he's in a decent place. Hasn't gotten a lot of changes since that hotfix, and it's been a whole nother patch since then.
She's gotten a few other nerfs, I think, even since the hotfix. She's been pretty powerful. I have seen her a reasonable amount in my games, and she usually does well. Like, this is the better version of Nidalee.
I don't think you can compare it to Nidalee. I think it's closer to like Talon.
Ah,
If I had to
I don't
guess.
think Talon does a lot of like jumping over walls, getting away, and putting out the damage very, very quickly. Neferi is more about putting the damage out slowly but sticking to someone like glue.
I can see that. It's definitely. I don't think it's similar to Nidalee. Nidalee has a way more
Well, Nidalee
inconsistent bonehead
sucks.
feast or famine playstyle.
Yeah, I think like this is what Nidalee was supposed to be when they reworked her, and I think they did a much better job with Neferi, and I think that's why we're seeing nerfs. Whereas in a moment we're going to see the real Nidalee actually get a buff.
That's funny, yeah. Okie dokie. Next up, without further ado, we have a buff for Nidalee. And if I'm not mistaken, this is actually a reversion of an ancient nerf too, when she had way more hybrid scalings before she was reworked. She used to have AD ratios on like her pounce and her swipe, and she still has it on her Q, but it's probably not as good. And she used to get like armor and MR and movement speed when she was in Cougar form back in the old days. That's
Hmm.
why like one of the first pros like Hotshot GG used to take this champion top, and it was super fucking annoying and stuff like that. But those days are long gone, and this is pretty much a pointless buff because she can't afford to even use this. She's so
Right, like
feast or famine with AP, there's no way for her to really even utilize this ratio.
yeah, there have been times where you've seen AD Nidalee and times most of the
Mm-hmm.
time where you see AP Nidalee, and most of the time when I see Nidalee on my team, I'm focusing less on their build and more on the 14 deaths that they have. But
AD,
yeah,
AD Nidalee is extinct. That was something I used to play like 10 years ago.
I was gonna ask, like, isn't AD Nidalee even worse than AP Nidalee these days?
Yes, it is, because you don't even have like the upside of doing a ton of damage from long range and then committing with like your super Q. Her Cougar Q is only good if her human javelin Q hits the target because it's
Right.
based on missing health. So without any AP, her whole kit just sucks.
Yeah. So this is, I agree, kind of a pointless nerf. I'm trying to think, are there any like hybrid items that she uses? And
No.
I can't think back to any time I've ever like bothered looking at Italy's items because you know usually they're just you know putting up death after death after death on the board, trying to dive enemies under their turret and just getting smacked.
She
Oh boy.
just yeah, she just can't afford to build anything that's
I say now that we have Neferi in the game, just get rid of Italy. Like you did a good job with the rework. Get rid of Italy.
well, I don't want them to get rid of her. I just want them to rework her to something that's a little more multifaceted, you know?
She needs to be something consistent. Yeah, she needs to have something consistent in her kit. And she needs to be able to survive for at least a second or two after she goes in and tries to kill someone.
Yeah, I'd like her to
Right.
be more of a choice between going for a more feisty cougar oriented build or going for this more hunter esque trap javelin shenanigans, human form stuff is what I would like to see out of a rework.
Yeah, I mean, even compare like her trap to like Caitlyn's, and it's like, geez, even her trap sucks.
Well, it's not meant to do damage. It's just meant to target
I know
them.
it
And
empowers her, but yeah, hers versus Caitlyn's, hers versus Caitlyn's.
well, Caitlyn's doesn't even do damage.
Yeah, but Caitlyn's keeps him, you know, still for 2 seconds and lets you headshot him.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, poor Nidalee. Like, even when she gets a buff, it's almost useless.
There was a time where I would dodge games when my mid laner would pick Nidalee a long time ago, and
I often dodge when my jungler, or for that matter, anybody else picks Nid.
yeah, that's how I am with Shaco now. Shaco, Master Yi, Nidalee, I just dodge when they're on my team.
Master Yi. Oh man, you're just giving up free wins then.
Well,
Master Yi.
I usually ban him because I don't want him on my team and I don't want him on the enemy team because he's so annoying to play against. And
That's what I do with Quinn sometimes, but no, Master Yi is in like a fantastic place right now. Like if you ever get Master Yi on your team, especially if you're playing mid, just go Lulu, free win.
I was about to say I never said he was bad. I just
Uh-huh.
don't I just don't want to play with him or against him. Now,
I
if
got it.
someone happens to hover
Right.
him on my team before I ban
Uh,
him, then I will play something crazy like Zillion or Kale or something. Just
oh, so
just
you gotta bring out the big balls. Just like if somebody's hovering him, just ban him anyway.
well, I know how stupid he is, and I don't want to make someone play Teemo jungle, which every Master Yi has that as a pocket pick. They're gonna, because they know that
I think we lost you, Chrissy.
they know that the champ gets banned
Maybe
like
we lost
half the
me.
time.
I don't know. I can't hear you.
No, I hear you. You can't hear me?
Looks like you're gonna have to do some video editing today, son.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, part 2 of 13.16, brief internet disruption. Let's get right into Rek'Sai, and this is definitely a buff. Sure, it's losing all of the base damage, but it's kind of inconsequential when a ratio goes from bonus AD to total AD. It's basically almost like doubling the ability or giving it an extra like 100 to 140 extra damage scaling, even if it starts off smaller. This
I don't
is
know
definitely
about
stronger.
that. I thought this was kind of almost like a, just a shuffling the numbers and doing very little type of change.
Most assuredly not. This is a monster buff.
What we're getting here is we're getting 50% of her base AD as a buff, and then we're losing 21 to 45 damage as a nerf. What is her base AD through most of the game? 50 at the beginning, 100 or so at the end?
No, it's probably like 65 to like 130 or something.
130 at level 18?
I wager it's very close to 130.
That
She's
would
like
be
more
a,
Bruiser-esque, so it's probably not 140, 150 like Darius or Lowy or Vi. So for an assassin, I wager it's like 130 or something.
Remind me, Chrissy, where do they, where does Rek'Sai usually order this skill? Like, where does she max it?
If you're jungling, you have to max this first because it's the AoE clear for the camps. And if you're going top, which has been a bit of a fad lately, I imagine you still max this first because it's her whole trading pattern as well. And it's an auto attack reset for her too.
Okay, so 1 through 9, you're actually not gaining that much, because you're losing the 45 at level 9, but as you get closer to level 18, this is definitely a buff to the total damage she's putting out.
Yeah, and keep in mind this ability applies on her next 3 auto attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, yeah.
And
yeah.
it also hits everything around her too.
I thought it was. And of course, the cooldown is very, very low. I mean, basically as much as you're going to be auto-attacking in practice during a fight, she's going to be getting this bonus.
Oh yeah, it almost has like no downtime, this ability.
Yeah, you're talking probably, 100 damage for every rotation of 3 auto-attacks at least at level 18. Not bad.
No, I bet it's a little stronger than that, probably. Okay, next up, we've got an amazing, amazing change here for Shaco. His boxes at level 1 are going to cost a fair amount more, and at all ranks for that matter. We got less mana regen, anything to discourage the clownish, degenerate AP Shaco builds, the better. And this is definitely going to make his early clear a bit more tenuous, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, this is definitely going to hurt his, start with a few boxes and then, rush the first 2 camps type of strat. Do you think this is intended to hurt jungle Shaco more, or do you think they're going after support Shacos? They're going to be using a lot of, cheesy boxes in lane.
I don't think support Shaco is super prevalent. I think it's about as prevalent as top Shaco, which is unbelievably annoying to lane against. I don't really think this is going to slow him down, honestly, at all. I just like trashing on this champ because I can't stand him, AP or AD, being on my team. So I don't think this is really going to hurt him that much. His mana pool isn't that bad, and the rest of his abilities are dirt cheap. So.
Yeah, my main duo for a couple seasons was perma-banning Shaco just because he thought it was so annoying.
Yep, that's what me and a friend of mine do too.
Now I think he does Draven most of the time. I don't know. I don't mind the clown in most of my games. I think he's a little bit fun, honestly.
Nope. Give me a Kha'Zix or Rengar any day of the week, please.
Oh,
get Shaco out of here.
Rengar is basically like Nidalee's slightly better brother.
Dude, he is an order of magnitude better than Nidalee.
Always finds a way to int anyway.
He is so much better than Nidalee. I can't believe you said that.
Oh my
He
god.
has so much more like, survivability and like outplay potential with the bushes and shit. He is
He's
so much
definitely
better than
better
Nidalee.
than Nidalee.
And he
Every
scales
time I see a Rengar,
he
though, they
scales
feed.
monstrously hard. Nidalee sucks.
Every time I see a Rengar, they feed.
Yeah, but they
Get out of
also
here.
put out the deeps. Nidalee blows.
Yeah, great. You did 1100 damage to a Mundo before you died.
I honestly think most people that play Rengar are actually pretty good. I think he's one of those champions that attracts mostly competent players. Some
Oh my
champions I
god.
think are only played mostly by like people that are really good at the player and they kind of scare away a lot of the dummy people. I think like Camille, Azir, Cassiopeia, and Rengar I think are one of those. Now Kha'Zix, I think Kha'Zix is a lot more noob friendly. So I think what you're saying about Rengar is actually applicable to Kha'Zix.
We're just playing on two different servers, man. Every Rengar I see feeds and then has no idea what to do.
Yeah, well, it's not been my experience.
Anyway, yeah, slight nerfs to Shaco here. I agree, this probably isn't too much of a nerf to him. But he'll be a little bit less degenerate, and he's gotten some minor buffs recently in terms of like some of his more skillful, like the backstabs and whatever. This is fine.
That is a skillful ability.
I mean, compared to the Jack in the Box.
Okay, next up we got Shyvana, and if you can believe it, she's getting a nerf to her AD stuff.
Didn't they just buff this last patch?
I don't remember. Probably. Sounds
I
about
think
right.
so. You were really excited about it. You were like, finally, they buffed the right part of her kit.
I think that might have been her Q actually. I think now that I
Yeah,
think about it.
you're right, but it was the AD scaling, right?
Yes.
Okay, so basically,
Okay.
this is almost like a revert of what they did last patch.
So we got less damage on the AoE portion of this ability. I think that portion of the ability actually does magic damage. This second and third part we're reading, this is the secondary effect of her W, which enhances her auto attacks while the AoE part is burning around her. So it's kind of like her little tiny built-in Nashers, except it does physical damage.
There's not a single person I know who isn't looking forward to her rework.
I think there's a huge world of places they could go with her theme. I just hope her
Absolutely.
dragon form looks way more imposing than her like
Yeah, I mean
concentration
that's what they
camp
said they want to do.
physique that she has now.
You'll
Her-
probably like it.
I think her ultimate form looks like terrible right now. It's so scrawny. It just looks
All
like
right, next we
crap.
got Silas, aka Chip.
Yeah, we got more mana. I actually do think
Don't
he's
tell me we lost your internet again.
really.
All right.
All right, welcome to part 3. Have some internet problems or Discord's freaking out. It's probably my fault since my internet's been really ghetto the last few months. Next up, we got Silas, who's getting more mana. I actually do think he's pretty mana hungry early on. I don't think it's
Oh
his
yeah,
problem in the late game, though.
yeah, agreed. He actually does run out of mana in a lot of the early trades early on. It's the only way that he can really fight, and this will let him basically use one more skill every time he comes back from Biss.
Yep.
Of one more skill before he runs Zoom. It's a small buff, but it's a nice buff for him.
Yeah, not a lot to say about that. Next up, we got some stat buffs to Tristana. Let's see, we got less health,
Uh-huh.
more armor per level, and
Less magic
less
resist.
MR. Yeah, I don't really know what to
So
think about that.
basically, they went nowhere with this. This is like some corporate executive basically hiring a bunch of accountants to make it look like the money went to one division instead of another, so that they were like profitable. But really, it didn't do anything to the business.
Uh, I'd say 3 of these changes are pretty meaningless. I think the only one of consequence is her gaining base
Mhm.
armor, because for an AD carry, any bit of armor to mitigate the flat shred of lethality, I think, is impactful. So I think that's the only one
Yeah,
of
but
consequence.
Yeah, but that's 4 base armor. At the beginning of the game, you're probably taking more damage from the support than you are from
Yeah,
the ADC.
but serrated dirk
Um,
is like 10 armor spend basically.
yeah, later on. But even that, means she's taking maybe like 3% less damage, but she also has 3% less health. This really feels like a nothing burger to me. The one thing I might guess, and I haven't seen it much lately, but have you seen Tristana mid maybe? I'm thinking maybe they're trying to make her worse against mages.
That was actually a thing like 2 years ago. People were busting out like Tristana and
Uh-huh.
Lucian, just because they both
Yeah.
are so fucking aggro and have such an all in against the mages.
I I haven't seen it recently, but I'm wondering if that could possibly be the case because as far as ADC Tristana in the laning phase and really through the entire game, this is nothing. This is like a zero sum change.
It's not a buff.
Yeah, I really think this is a zero sum change. The only thing I can guess is they're trying to make her worse against mages mid, and even then, I haven't seen her mid more than once or twice in the last year.
All
Yeah,
right,
another weird one.
I would say it's a or net nerf instead of power neutral, as you like to say.
Okay. I would say it's completely power neutral myself.
Well, I think the base armor is more impactful in the laning phase, even if the armor growth eventually compensates for that. So that's the
Oh
part of
no,
the game.
they're giving her more armor and more armor growth.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're
I'm saying
taking,
it's more impactful. You know,
yeah, I'm just saying there's no like compensation. The compensation is they're getting rid of the MR and they're getting rid of health.
I hear you.
Okay. So you think it's a buff? I think it's a nothing burger.
Okie dokie. Next up, we got Wukong, and they decided to make his Q cost no mana. That's okay, because it's always up anyway.
Uh-huh.
And then there's like a bug on my screen. I assume this is a change to his W clone thing. The text on my screen is kind of messed up with this ability for some reason.
Warrior Trister?
Yeah,
It says mana cost is reduced to 60 to 40 from 80 to 40. So at the earlier ranks, it costs less mana. So this is just basically more mana for Weasel Woo all around.
yeah. Nobody really plays him top anymore. He's basically just a cheese lord, full AD jungler now.
Yeah, it's mostly in the jungler, and more often than not, I actually see him succeed there.
There was a time where this champion was kind of like an off tank or a bruiser in the old days. Those
Oh
times.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
moved on to Talon levels of play though.
Actually in Arena, I've seen him kind of go bruiser with some success as well. But yeah, as far as the Rift, he's more of a burst assassin type.
Okie dokie. That'll do it for the champion changes. Next up, some very inconsequential item changes. Ace, first up, we've got Axiom Arc,
Uh-huh.
which got a big nerf in the other patch that really limited its user base, but now they're giving the baseline effect a big, or I guess a bit of a buff.
Didn't
Now
we
that it,
decide that? Sorry, go on.
well, the rest of the portion of the ability now scales only with lethality now, where it was strong enough to be picked up as a one-off item on just about any AD champion that
Uh-huh.
wanted to abuse it. Uh, it's probably still the case that this is still kind of not worth getting on anyone that doesn't build like full lethality, though, even with this buff.
Well, I think when we looked at this change, we actually worked out the numbers, and because it gives you 18 lethality in itself, it was like you get one more lethality item, and you're breaking even, and then beyond that, you actually do better than when it used to refund. Was it 25% of your total cooldown? Was it 30?
I don't remember, but it was good enough to be a one-off item on someone who would not build any other lethality items.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely worse as a one-off now. But what we're going to see with all of these item changes is that everything except Duskblade of Drakthar for assassins basically picked up a small buff, and then Duskblade got a nerf. So just for that, I think there's going to be a lot of assassins shifting from Duskblade, which was just so good, to Axiom Arc. And yeah, now that it's giving you a 10% cooldown, plus 0.4% per lethality, which just from this one item is another 7%. This really isn't bad.
Well, I'd like to say one thing. You said switch, where Axiom Arc is not a mythic like Duskblade is. So there's no like this or
Now,
that
speaking of
decision.
Duskblade,
Well, you made it sound like both of them are mythics and you have to choose one or the other. One's a legendary and one's a mythic, so. Know what I mean? Oh, for God's sakes. Alright, here we are with part 4 of 16 or 13.16, and last thing I said is you were saying how they would have to switch from Duskblade to Axiom Arc, and before it cut out I explained that only Duskblade is a mythic and Axiom Arc is a legendary, so you don't have to switch. You can still get them
that's
both.
right. That's right. Axiom Arc's not a mythic. I keep thinking it is.
It was Prowler's Claw that got downgraded.
Yes, yes. I don't know why I was thinking that. Sorry, but yeah. So I think Axiom Arc is still looking pretty good in a lot of builds now, especially now that it's 10% lethality, plus 7% just for its baseline value with the lethality it gives you. And I said 10% lethality. I meant the cooldown reduction. Plus bonus for all the other lethality that you stack up. Like, if your champ likes being able to ultimate twice during a fight, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a cool item. I just feel like it's a little too niche. I wish there was like a version other types of champions could take.
And by the way, for everybody listening to us continually cut out and having to do this video in 4 parts, you should have listened to me at the beginning. I told you to skip this one. But thank you for listening all the way through anyway.
Alright, next up we'll talk about Duskblade now, where the like fade and targetability thing now has a 30-second cooldown instead of 10.
Yeah.
That's probably a good thing, but then the bonus damage went down a tiny bit. At one point it was like 25%, then got nerfed to 20, now it's getting hit again. Overall though, for like the, jump in there and kill someone people, the fact that it just triggers at least once is the important thing.
Yeah, I think this is actually a fairly big nerf to the Duskblade, and I'll tell you why. While generally in a really intense, bursty team fight, you're only going to be able to proc this once anyway, whether it's 30 seconds or 10 seconds. What a lot of the really good assassins do is they can proc it once in a team fight, get out of that team fight, and then as it breaks up and people are trying to back and buy their items, or as they're trying to move on to an objective, they find another target, they pick them off there, and then any of their teammates that were near them, if you've got the Duskblade proccing a second time, you can get away from them. And that was actually a nice thing that a lot of the really good assassins did. And I found them doing that in a lot of my games, and honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. Like, I totally agree that Duskblade was an overpowered item and it needed a nerf of some sort, but they nerfed the coolest part of the item. I would have really liked them to just take away some of the, just a little bit of the stats instead, and let the really good assassins do their cool assassin things.
I think it was just fine. I only thought it was broken prior to like the AD item giant overhaul when it would constantly reset. That's when I thought it was too strong.
I don't know. I
mean, that's basically as strong as Kha'Zix's ultimate.
Almost every assassin is going this as their mythic. And even a lot of people who are supposed to be fighters, people like Wukong, are taking things like this. It really was just, it was crowding out a lot of the other assassin items and even some of the other AD mythics that were not designed for ADCs, obviously. So I'm glad it got nerfed, but I really wish they would have nerfed the stats rather than the coolest part of Duskblade. That's all.
Okie dokie, next up we got Prowler's Claw, and I actually like this change. It's such kind of a not a super impactful effect like it used to have, that crazy dash where you would dash through people. Those days are gone. Now this is basically just a I kind of think of it as like just an extra keystone almost, what this item does. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's
you just get bonus damage for dashing. Yeah, I feel like that's what, sudden impact kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean it's resetting every few seconds and has obviously a very easy condition for a lot of champions to proc. Yeah, they're just improving it a little bit, and which is kind of what they did with all these other assassin items that are not called Duskblade.
Yep.
That's all I got to say.
And then lastly, we've got Serpent's Fang and Umbral Glaive, both gained some lethality. These are kind of the Joker utility lethality items that nobody buys anyway. The ones that you find on like Senna and Pike because they're just so poverty stricken. So now they get a little more bang for their buck, but none of the mainstream mid laners ever take these basically.
Yeah, I agree with you in general. Serpent's Fang definitely has some niche uses in certain games. For if you're going against a set that's getting like 400% of his HP as a shield, if you're going against even like a Vex or something like that, can get a pretty big shield. If you can use the Serpent's Fang against a couple champions that are putting really big shields on themselves, it pays off for itself. But I agree.
I don't really think it's good enough at what it does.
They've buffed it a few times over the years, and I think if you find the right team to use it against, it's actually a quite good item as a fifth item or so.
Yeah.
Umbral Glaive, yeah, I don't see that very often. The Blackout assassin item used to be very popular, but once it was moved to Umbral Glaive, hasn't really been seen much. But, worth pointing out, this is more lethality, and if you're using that in combination with Axiom Arc, hey, pretty good.
Yep. Well, that does it for 13.16 finally, and we better get the hell out of here.
Before we have to do a part 5. Yeah, we're out. See ya.
Alright. See you guys next time.